back at the Diaspora Salon here in Marrakesh with Christy Pichichero. And we're going to expand on a person that she brought up, a character she brought up during a very, very intense conversation early in the day. Christy, welcome. And welcome to this podcast. We are so excited to be here in Marrakesh. Tell our listeners about the Chevalier de Saint-Georges and his importance.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a real honor to be here and to be able to talk about Joseph Bologne, the Chevalier de Saint-Georges, the Knight of St. George, who was born in 1745 and died in 1799 at the very end of the French Revolution. He is important because he is the first Black celebrity of the Atlantic world, but has been forgotten. And so he was born enslaved in the French colony of Guadeloupe, which is still a part of France today.
Protectorate, yes.
Exactly. And he was born to a white father who owned him, who owned a plantation, a very successful plantation in Guadeloupe, in Baïf, and to an enslaved mother, Nanon. We know her name, Nanon. Who was also owned by his father and who was a Black Creole woman. She was born there in Guadeloupe, worked in the house, and took care of Saint-Georges, this little boy, Joseph, her son's half-sister, because this father also had a legitimate white wife and white daughter. This was one of the phenomena of the time of slavery were these mixed families. But it was very uncommon what happened in the case of the Chevalier de Saint-Georges, which is that instead of remaining enslaved and staying on the plantation, his father brought him to Paris.
Really?
Yes.
That was unusual at the time.
It's quite unusual. And we have a few examples of this happening, of wealthy families sending their mixed-race children, begotten of a relationship with an enslaved person, to the metropole for an education. Because we have to remember that these plantation elites were only elites in the colonies.
Right.
Once they came back to metropolitan France,
They were part of the masses.
They're part of the masses. They are the new men making money far away in other businesses, and they weren't the ancient elites of France. They weren't a part of the nobility. So these people of the plantation world, of the colonial world, were sending their children and trying to move up in terms of the social hierarchy. And so their children were a central part of this.
As a historian, I have to ask you, is there any evidence of how old he was when he was sent to France? Or was he a small child? Was it later in life? Did he sort of get a taste of it? And was he expected then to go back to Guadeloupe?
Yes.
After?
Such a good question. So he came to France first when he was about 2 years old.
Oh.
So very small. And his sister...
Nanon with him too? Or?
Yes. So they make this... They traverse the Atlantic, which I think is such a fascinating moment to think about, because so much of our vision of the diaspora of the time, and when we talk about slavery, has to do with the other direction of traveling across the Atlantic. This story
of no return,
of chattel, of becoming a belonging, of becoming a thing, of being stripped of one's identity, of one's family, of everything one knows. And so thinking about Nanon as an enslaved mother with her enslaved son, making also a forced journey across the Atlantic to France, and being uprooted herself. She left her mother behind. And so she leaves everything that she knows to make this journey, where so many children died on transatlantic journeys. We do have some statistics about that. It was a long, treacherous voyage. Many people died of disease, venturing with her only son, and having to take care of him, as well as the legitimate little daughter, whose name was Elisabeth Benedictine. So he first came when he was around 2. They did go back and forth, and this was very common for people running plantations and trying to establish themselves in Europe. back and forth, taking care of business on both sides. He settled there for good at around age 7. So if you think of yourself, and if your listeners think of themselves at age 7, right? This is a second grader.
Yeah.
Exactly. So he has some formative memories in Guadeloupe and is a son of Guadeloupe. But he also becomes a son of Europe, of metropolitan France, and specifically of Paris.
Seeing sketches, photos of him, or paintings of him
Yes.
at the time, he seemed to be very fair.
Yes.
And could possibly, as one would say in the United States, pass. Yeah?
Yes.
Did that help him?
Wow, you've got all the good questions. That's why you run in this podcast, and you're amazing. I'm so happy to be here and to think about that with you, because in his case, he's living during an era where the nobles, the aristocrats of the time, are also painting themselves white. This is an era of powdered faces and powdered hair, wigs, and then bright makeup put on top. So in so many ways, when all of these people put on their masks, it created an opportunity for him to do the same.
Sure.
And there is one portrait that we have of him that's quite well known now after one by Mather Brown. And it turns out that he remarked in response to seeing that portrait that it was a frighteningly true likeness. Really? And so I think by our standards, he would look like a lighter-skinned black guy. And at the time, given that the other black folk around in Paris were enslaved and did not have the makeup on, he was really playing that line between trying to pass, but not just pass racially. I don't know how possible that was from him. Socially, to work his way into becoming something of a member of this elite class of people. He ends up at Versailles. He ends up in the bodyguard of the king at Versailles.
So tell me about his, but he was also brilliant, was he not?
Oh,
yes. So he's called the Black Mozart?
Oh, boy.
Is that right?
Oh, boy. According to some people. Yes. And so this child comes to Paris. His father finagles his way into getting him a spot in a noble young gentleman's academy, where he is fencing, he's doing music, he's doing languages, he's having this aristocratic education, and it turns out he's good at everything.
He's brilliant.
He is brilliant. He is a genius. He is a polymath. And so he becomes an incredible fencer, so good that they call him the inimitable.
Really?
The inimitable. Which, wowza,
yes,
that's
that's a mouthful.
Woo, it's a mouthful, and it's just it's something we don't hear. Someone who cannot be imitated in any way. So he has fencing moves named after him. He's battling people.
Really?
Yes, people are traveling from all over Europe to fight him. He's winning every time. Remarkable quickness, and it's a dexterity of body and mind. Well, guess what? Turns out it's the same in music. He becomes a virtuosic violinist and composer. He becomes the concert master of one of Europe's finest orchestras, the Concert des Amateurs. So he's conducting, he's playing his own music, he's playing first violin, and he wrote this music for himself as first violin. And so I've had the privilege of working with different musicians who have played this music. Yep, we've done concert salon conversations. And where musicians using Baroque instruments, really good violinists, have said, I can't play this at tempo.
Really?
And even with modern violins, which are, violinists who are listening, don't kill me, which are easier to play than the Baroque instruments. They have much more capacity than the Baroque instruments. But even for these modern violinists, it's only the very best virtuosos of our time that can play his violin work.
How did you come about him? How did you know so much about him? Again, I know you're a historian, but the music part, what came first when you discovered who he was? Was it you as the was it Christy the musician or Christy the historian?
Oh, let me think about that question. He came to me as a historian who was interested in music. So my first book, The Military Enlightenment, War and Culture in the French Empire from Louis IV to Napoleon, examined the process of the democratization of heroism during the 1700s in France, when people started saying, you know what, these wealthy guys who are the officers in the army, these wealthy white dudes who come from centuries of lineage close to the king, they're celebrated, they get all the credit for what happens, but what about the common soldiers who go out there, who fight, who are maimed, who are traumatized, and they get no credit for it? They're never celebrated as heroes. Maybe people start to say those are actually the heroes, because they can't go to the king and say, now give me a castle, give me a new title, let me walk alongside you at Versailles. And so there's a sort of upending of the culture of heroism. And then, along with that, people start looking at folks of color who are also being brought into the armed forces.
So
and
this is the next tier.
This is it. Yes, into the grand scale of the French Empire, which stretches across continents at this point. Maybe some of these people of color could also be heroes. And so I stumbled upon Saint-Georges because he becomes a military officer at a relatively young age, I will say.
So much of this is happening so fast, I feel.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it is.
You know, he's born in Guadeloupe. 7 years old, he's there. Next thing you know, he's in this conservatory, and then now he's fighting.
It's a total whirlwind, and
and
it could only be him. It took him, this miracle of a human, in a miracle of a set of circumstances where the openness was just enough
for him to get in.
For just enough, because laws are being passed in metropolitan France at the same time to control the movement of black people. And in 1777, there is literally a law called the Déclaration pour la police des Noirs, the Declaration for the Police of Blacks. So we think about, Trayvon Martin. We think about our moment about George Floyd and that racial policing and that policing black bodies is a story of civil rights and of our time. But this dates back hundreds of years that black folk were being targeted. And so despite this, he builds this network, and he constantly, day after day, has to perform with all of his greatness to try to maintain a very fragile spot in a world that would like to see him as a slave.
But knowing that that's the world he was a part of, did he embrace, and one can understand knowing the consequences that he might shun or play up his how shall we say, his privilege.
Yes.
Right? Did he, or was he known amongst other black people as a black person? Do we know that? I don't know.
On. Thank you for saying the P word, privilege. It's so important because people sought privilege. They sought to be in that class of people. That's where he wanted to be. Right. And necessarily, as a result, it meant a work to distance himself publicly from those that looked like him, including his own mother. You might have seen this film, Chevalier, which came out about him a couple years ago in 2022.
Yes.
And in that film, which I have written a review of that film. Listeners, you can go read it online. It's available free you go read it on a publication called Imaginaries that is published by H France, History of France Network. His mother in that film, she's with him. She's out there. She's supporting him, and she's leading him toward finding his blackness, finding his roots. In real life, it was probably very much the opposite. She had to be hidden. She remained hidden in domestic spaces. He did not wear cornrows. He did not wear cornrows. Right? He had his wig. He had his powdered wig like everybody else.
He had to blend.
That's it.
This is fascinating.
Yeah, and so in the end, from what we know, for most of his life, he was not an abolitionist. Even though the wealth that allowed him to rise to this high station, to become the first black celebrity of the Atlantic world, that wealth was built on the backs of his own family.
Heavy stuff. And
Heavy stuff. Heavy stuff.
Heavy stuff. Well, I'm glad we touched on this because I'm sure there's so much more to say, but I think this not only piqued my curiosity and interest, but I think that people who are listening are going to want to know, who was this person?
Yes.
And you talk about him with so much clarity.
Oh, I'm so glad.
As much clarity as you can.
Right, right. Yes. First, for not knowing. There's so much we don't know about him. He was not canonized like Mozart was canonized. His celebrity was taken apart while he was still alive, and then even more so immediately after he passed away. And I've traced that.
He died at a very young age, too.
He did. I mean, for the era and for everything he lived and for how tired he must have been. Yes. I think about you. I think about me. I think about trying to do all the things that we do and trying to embody excellence in front of audiences that want to take us apart. It's exhausting in an existential way. And he battled injuries and disease pretty constantly in the second half of his life. And nevertheless was this person. And we have some of his music that has come down to us. Everybody listening, you can check him out on Spotify.
I was going to say, where can we listen to his music?
Yes, you'll find it on Spotify.
And tell us the full name.
His name is Joseph, just like we spell it, Bologne, or Bologne. The Chevalier de Saint-Georges. D-E is de Saint-Georges, looks like Saint George.
And Georges with an S. En français?
Well, interestingly, he does not have an S when he signs his name. So I'm talking about that in my book as a very interesting feature of how he writes his name, which is un-French. But yes, please listen to him. There have been modern recordings done, including of one of his operas, The Anonymous Lover.
And you can read about him in your book, too.
You're going to read about him in my book. You can go see that film and then read my critique and wait for my book, and hopefully a lot more. We have so many books, so many. Yes. We have the movie, play about Mozart.
That's true.
But Mozart took music from the Chevalier de Saint-Georges.
Oh, you're burying the lead, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Listen, we could call Mozart the White Saint-Georges, but instead, let's just have Saint-Georges have his own name, the Chevalier de Saint-Georges, and a virtuoso before Mozart that Mozart admired so much that he stole some of his music, borrowed some of his music, as people might like to say.
Let's keep it safe.
Yeah, let's go. So go listen to the OG, to the Chevalier. Listen to his opera sung by the beautiful soprano Nicole Cabell. Beautiful Black American soprano, Black and Asian soprano. Let's put this man back into history with a capital H where he belongs.
Well, listen, Christy, this was such a pleasure to have this conversation with you.
It is my pleasure.
Beautiful setting in Marrakesh. I wish our listeners could see this place.
Yes.
And thank you again for joining us from the Diaspora Salon here in Marrakesh, Morocco with Christy Pichichero. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you so much.
See you soon.
Take care, everybody.